Hey folks, Fernando doing another video for more survivalists and sharing with you guys the most important survival lesson of them all, yet the one most people tend to ignore, even among the survival experts, preppers, or people that consider themselves so. Yet over the years, and I've been doing this for a while, over the years, whenever I talk with people that have gone through rough moments in life themselves, some of them more, talking with Celco, talking with Daniel in Venezuela, we all agree on the same key aspect, yet most people will ignore it just because it is not convenient, because of normalcy bias, because of a number of reasons, which is obviously the most difficult thing for people to do. Look, this is what's happening in Ukraine. You're very much aware that, yes, it's in spite of what you hear from the Russian propaganda, these are bombs dropping on houses of people. And this family is no more. The man survived, but the wife, 3-month-old baby, and mother-in-law all dead in this horrible Russian attack, man. It's terrible what's happening over there, and the fact that some people even still now think that this is not happening. I just always, whenever I have this disbelief, I always go back to, Fernando, remember there's thousands of people that still think the world is flat. So you cannot be surprised by anything anymore. Even though you see these things with your own eyes, there's always going to be someone that's, oh, no, but that's Photoshop, that's fake news, that's lies from the West, which is weird if you're coming from the West yourself, that you're going to be taking sides with commie dictators, China, and so on. Anyway, let's go back to the specific lesson here, which is very much important. This is the man that lost his family, right? This is his story. Let's listen to it and see what you learn from this. Even though you're not here.
The moment a Russian missile slammed into an apartment building on Easter weekend in Odessa. Yuri Glodin's family was inside, waiting for him to return from the grocery store. On the way home, that's when I heard an explosion. I felt immediately something bad had happened. I tried to call my wife. She did not answer. When he got there, chaos. Police and EMS had arrived. He and a bystander ran in to try and find his family. We began to clear away the rubble, and this is how, alongside EMS staff, we were able to find the bodies of my family, all murdered. First, they found his mother-in-law Ludmila's body, then his wife's body, but his 3-month-old daughter was missing. They were being told to leave for fear of a building collapse. I was constantly shouting, he says, "There is still a child up there. Did you find the child or not?" Eventually, they found her little body lifeless. He returned to find her blood-soaked baby stroller the next day. It's hard to live with this. My family was my whole life. I lived for their sake. When my baby came along, I understood the meaning of life, he says. 19-year-old Alexei can't believe he is still alive. He was in the same apartment complex. The explosion sent slabs of scorching hot concrete and shrapnel into his body. I realized that a rocket had hit my place and I started to burn, he says. I thought another minute and I would definitely turn into ash. I felt everything. 20% of his body was burned. His hands, arms, and back. Jagged pieces of shrapnel had to be removed from his legs as well. He cannot do simple things for himself at the moment, but he is thankful for simply being alive. It's a miracle for everyone, for me as well, he says. Before the blast, he was preparing to take to the seas and work on a commercial supply ship. Now, he's just practicing walking again. His neighbor, once surrounded by family, now walks alone. We used to walk in the park when my wife was pregnant. Every place he now goes in Odessa, a reminder of what a Russian missile took from him. His wife, child, and mother-in-law, now dead and buried. With each deadly strike, a new and terrible story is born in Ukraine. And Yuri had planned, by the way, to take his family out of Odessa to safety. He merely didn't get the chance.
And that is the freaking key right there. He was planning on doing it. He didn't do it in time. And I'm not by any stretch of the imagination blaming this man whatsoever. The only one to blame is a monster in Russia, that bloody dictator, Vladimir Putin. But this man was planning on leaving and didn't leave in time. Of course, this is a regret he'll have for the rest of his life. But this is not something that only applies to someone in Ukraine. It applies to everyone, no matter where you are. The lesson still holds. When I talk with Selko, what is the thing? Not being there. Of course, that is the key of everything. When you talk with people in Venezuela, I was actually chatting with a guy from Russia who told me, yeah, this is terrible. I have family in precisely in this city, Odessa, and he said, no, they're fine over there. But you know why he says they're fine over there? Because you see these images. This is a month after the event. This man is barely, holding on there, but he's able to talk because this happened about a month ago. So when you see him talking, he's already lived with this horrible tragedy for a month. But notice that when he's walking around, there's people in parks and so on. Now, do you not understand that at any moment, because of the very clear tragedy of constant harassment, all of these people could be blown to pieces by a Russian missile? It's simply the way they are going with this war now. Just dropping bombs randomly so as to keep a tragedy of harassment and instability and insecurity and a country basically with no future. That's what Russia wants for Ukraine. That's how they're planning on getting them to surrender to them. But people hold on to the idea of things still being normal. Imagine that you're in this town, right, where all of these things are happening, but at the same time, you say, I have to go on with life. And let's put it this way. Looking at the numbers, you really don't have much to hold on in terms of, bad things happen everywhere. And that's absolutely true. If you look at causes of death, there's probably a number of them that are much more likely than getting killed by a Russian missile in Odessa. But that doesn't mean that at any moment this cannot happen. But the huge lesson here is timing. You have to understand when you have to leave the place entirely. Now, this is very personal. For me, I did the same video in many regards back in 2018. In 2018, when Russia first invaded Ukraine, when the first little green man, back then it was called that way, little green men crossing the border into Ukraine, my analysis was this is going to be terrible, and most likely Russia is going to be taking over the eastern part where they have more support. It wasn't really that far off from what ended up happening years later. So it was quite an accurate estimation. But what he also said is, I wouldn't want to be there anymore. I wouldn't want to be in a country that is obviously being invaded by Russia. Russians are savages. They've been that way historically from as far as we can go back. But looking back at more recent history, they've done horrible things wherever they invaded, and they've invaded a number of countries already. So it's not a surprise. It's still the same thing that they keep on doing. So you cannot expect a more civilized approach to any of this. Is this something that you want to keep on living? This is super personal.
He's just
because some people
to walk in
will
the park
say,
when
you know
my wife
what,
is
Fernando, I'll take my risk.
Every place he now goes in Odessa, a
Look at these
reminder of
images.
what a Russian missile took
I know
from him.
it's not all that obvious, but look at this. He's in a park, the CNN lady is, and there's people around walking, going to a beautiful park. This is simply accepting your fate and accepting that if a bomb drops and kills those two moms with those little strollers, that was just your time. That's simply accepting living, and we do this all the time. Everyone, all of us do this all the time. We accept our reality and try to cope with it as best as we can. You do it wherever it is that you're watching this from. A guy in Latin America does it. A guy in Africa in conditions that you would consider hell on earth yourself, but that guy in Africa or in some other impoverished part of the world, in many parts of Latin America, would be, for many of you, hell on earth. Nonetheless, they still, well, I'm happy with my life. You just cope and accept what you have. There is a point, though, where you end up regretting that. And it may be personal, like in the story of this man. This man is going to be regretting his entire life not leaving in time. There's people that, in my own country, where I come from, in Argentina, I've known so many of these stories of people that, Argentina's getting rough, and it's getting very dangerous, and the economy is crap. Most of all, the dangerous part, there's so many people that were planning on leaving, and just before they left, they broke into their house, ended up doing horrible things to the entire family. Their kids end up getting killed. Son of someone gets kidnapped and executed by a bunch of kidnappers. All of these stories, and at some point you may be thinking, okay, I leave this country because of this, I go somewhere else, and something else bad happens to me. You have to make your decisions and learn to live with them. But the lesson is still valid. There's a timing for everything. There's a timing for leaving Ukraine. There's a timing for leaving Venezuela. There's a timing for leaving Argentina if that's what you don't want for your life anymore. There's a timing maybe to eventually end up leaving the United States as well, when you're being told that you are the greatest threat the country has ever seen. You, the white guy that has certain conservative ideas, you're being told by your own government that you are the worst threat the country has seen. Even more so than ISIS. Literally, that's what they're telling you. Now, am I saying you should be leaving the United States? Man, that's going to be up to you. But realize what you're being told already. Realize, this was not something that Vladimir Putin was saying out loud. I'm going to be slaughtering and bombing Ukrainians. He's saying that he's going after the Nazis. But they're going after the white supremacists, my man. Remember that as well. When Joe Biden is saying that they're going after the white supremacists, who the hell do you think he's talking about? This is the karma thing of you nodded along when they were saying they were going after the Nazis and ended up slaughtering babies. You nod along when they're saying they're going after the white supremacists, and the white supremacist is you. Dude, learn what's going on in the world. You cannot be surprised by this anymore. It's all out there. You just have to see it and analyze it properly. Regarding this kind of thing, I've written a bunch of books that I've mentioned so many times. Street survival skills, bugging out and relocating, and surviving the economic collapse. For this stuff specifically, bugging out and relocating is where I go through the more intricate aspect of, how much time. Sometimes it's a matter of seconds. A house fire, a fire in a building. It is literally seconds that you have before that place goes down. The collapsed building in Miami, not that long ago. You see some dust, you hear cracking, you hear the structure of the building cracking. You may have a few seconds, you may have even a couple minutes to leave, depending exactly on what's going on. But it's a matter of making that decision. A fire, collapsed structure, flawed. You're being warned about different political changes. You're being warned about a potential war. You see an economic collapse going down in that specific region. Is moving something that's going to be helping me? Am I supposed to leave the state, the city, the house alone where I am? Am I supposed to leave the entire country, the entire continent, because the entire region is going to be going through very hard times? That's something you'll have to decide yourself when it goes down. See you in our next video, folks. Have a great day. Take care.